Hey everyone, welcome to this weekly Sidereal Astrology forecast for the week of March 13th to the 19th of 2023. Alright, so this week we have a lot going on astrologically. I'll try to make it as concise and simple as possible here. But basically we have a three-way conjunction between the Sun, Mercury, and watery Neptune. So first of all, there is a new beginning emerging this week in regards to our more receptive side, especially with all these planets in Pisces now, connecting more to our receptive side, more to our, what gives us peace in life, connecting more to our soul. And there's likely a new beginning with this emerging. But this stellium here, this three-way conjunction, will be squaring up to assertive and independent Mars. And so collectively, there will likely be an over and under extreme in regards to the assertive and independent energies of Mars. So it is good to be very conscious of this, as Mars is very fiery, it can be very initiating, and so we want to make sure that energy is nice and balanced. And so anything that's constructive with healthy initiative, healthy independence, healthy action, assertiveness, this can make the energy very constructive, and actually a very constructive week for moving those types of things forward. So a lot of this is concentrated about the middle part of the week on the days surrounding about Wednesday. Along with this, Venus will be squaring up to Pluto. And so as a minor note, really, because there's so much going on with that Mars and Neptune energy, with the Venus square Pluto, but still a good time to see how we can connect to the deeper side to life and our relationships in a constructive way. Again, squares do tend towards over and under extremes, and so with Pluto it can be a bit raw and deep and intense, and recognizing that we do have that need to dive deep during this time, but finding that constructive way of doing it through things like trust and vulnerability and depth in those relationships can be fantastic. And then Venus will be shifting into fiery Aries come Saturday, and so there will be a shift of values over the weekend, going more from that watery Pisces energy of, again, what's important to us on a soul level, which again will certainly still be important this week and the coming weeks with the Sun and Mercury here, but a shift of value from more of the receptive things, soul-guided things, into the more assertive and independent and action-oriented things in life. All right, so let's go and break all of this down here in more detail when we return. Alrighty, so here is the sky for this week. We're looking at this for Monday, March 13th through Sunday, March 19th of 2023. And as you can see here, we are using the visible sky on this channel, which is very different from mainstream astrology. Mainstream, even other forms of sidereal, do not use the visible sky. And so we are taking that into account. So you will notice a lot of the signs are different. And so if you are new to this, or you're hearing some of the signs are different from what you've heard in other readings, definitely check out the link down below for more information on true sidereal astrology. Okay, so let's just do a quick recap because it is actually quite straightforward. We have all but Mars in terms of the fast movers going into, or have been into, Pisces here this week. Mercury is going to start to shift into Pisces right at the beginning of the week on Monday to join up with the Sun and Venus, who's actually already been here for quite some time. So the main focus and theme this time of the year is on connecting more with our soul. And this is, again, especially the case now that the Sun is going to be getting very close and conjoining Neptune midweek around that Wednesday time period. So focusing more on, what feeds our soul, what gives us that sense of soul fulfillment in life, a sense of peace, spiritual well-being, connecting more to that and more to the ethers and more to the receptive and more internal qualities of life. And there's likely to be a new beginning with this emerging this week around that Wednesday because of the conjunction with Neptune, but it's really just a further development. There's more and more of these developments unfolding over the coming weeks with the Sun, who's just recently entered into here, and Mercury, who's going to be entering here on Monday. Now, Mars is, of course, doing his thing for what he's been doing for quite some time, which has been taking his time with Mars in Taurus, with the more grounded elements of life. So it is good, especially with Mars in aspect this week, which we'll talk about. Good to take things slowly and steadily when we are asserting ourselves, taking action, being independent. Good to do so in a way that is stable, grounded, resourceful. And again, taking our time, stopping to smell the roses and this kind of a thing. So there's been lots of lessons around this pretty much since the second half of last year and into this year with Mars retrograde in Taurus. And so there's still more of those developments to be finalized, really, as Mars does finish that constellation. And we'll start to enter into Gemini in the coming couple weeks here. All right, so this is the placements, okay, coming into the week. Now, here are the aspects. So obviously, this looks like a lot, and it is a lot, but really it's simplified into really just one major aspect. And this is that the Sun will be conjoining Mercury and Neptune, that three-way conjunction, that stellium, and that's going to be here in Pisces. Okay. And that stellium, that three-way conjunction, is going to be squaring up to Mars, okay, from Taurus. And so first of all, the three-way conjunction, the stellium here, is a new beginning, okay? Conjunctions are like new moons, they're new beginnings, they're the beginning of the cycle of those planets involved. And in this case, the more outer planet is Neptune, so a new beginning really with that, again, Pisces, Neptune, receptive side of things. So good to allow the energies to, be turned a little bit more inward. Now we are in the third quarter moon coming into this week and during this conjunction here. So it is still an action-oriented phase of the lunar cycle, meaning that it is good to move things forward in our lives, especially in the context of whatever shifted about this time last week. All right, early last week, we had that full moon, and so that would have been a time of getting some new perspective and perhaps making some shifts and changes along the life journey. Okay, so this week we're implementing any perspectives that we've had since or around that full moon early last week. Okay, so it's still action-oriented. It's still good to challenge ourselves, implement, move things forward, but in the receptive way, right? In the way that's perhaps bringing in more spirituality into our life, bringing in more peace into our life, more presence, more acceptance. And I would say fundamentally with all this and in Pisces, connecting more with our soul and what gives us that sense of soul fulfillment and spiritual fulfillment and peace in life. So any intentions around this, first of all, are fantastic, as again, the conjunctions are new beginnings to the cycles, and in this case with the Neptune cycle. And so any intentions around bringing in more receptivity and all this into our life is fantastic. But all in all, new moons or conjunctions in this case are a time of really listening, right, and seeing what new emerges. It's only the very beginning of the cycle, and it's the lowest energy of this phase of the cycle. Again, in the lunar cycle, it's action-oriented, but in the context of spirituality, in the context of soul fulfillment in life, it's only the very beginning, and in this sense, for the year. Okay, so when we're dealing with the Sun and Mercury, we're dealing with yearly energies. So it's a new beginning to what we would say maybe the Neptunian year, okay, or the Pisces year, which is starting now. The beginning of the next 12 months to develop the more receptive, soul-guided, soul-important elements of life. Okay, so that is obviously very important. That is the conjunction with Neptune. But while that's happening, there's going to be the square up to Mars. So Mars is very different from that watery energy, right? Mars ruling Aries, for those of you who know, is all about action. It's more in the world. It's about knowing who we are and what we want, where, it's that side of ourselves. Whereas Pisces is the, again, soul or spiritual side, which is not so much about knowing or conceptualizing who we are and what we want, but more feeling it, right? And connecting to it intuitively or spiritually or emotionally. And so obviously you can see here that this is a challenge. So these are very different energies involved. And so while it's important to connect with our soul, it's then also important to find that constructive way to express the fiery side of ourselves, right? Or the ego side of ourselves, or the action-oriented side of ourselves. And in the square, it does tend towards extremes. So collectively, the natural tendency will be over and under extremes with that Mars energy. Mars and over extremes can be too much assertiveness, aggression, fighting, conflict. Not enough Mars might be passive or passive-aggressive, or not taking the actions required. And so the pendulum will be swinging, and they'll be swinging for all of us a little bit differently. But collectively, it's a good time to be aware of this need, the need to assert ourselves, the need to be independent, the need to take action. But by being conscious of that need, we can do it constructively, right? Consciously and constructively. So it's a great time to also set intentions with healthfully developing that assertive and initiating an independent side of ourselves, again, consciously. That's going to help balance it out, help it cultivate the more healthy expressions of Mars, which is that healthy assertiveness and healthy independence and action. So that's the setting the intentions, side of it. But, also bringing in some of that simple directing the energy, in our lives. So if there's anywhere you do want to direct this, where it is towards maybe healthy activities, healthy goals, healthy pursuits in your life, healthy ways of maybe expressing yourself or asserting yourself in relationships, this could be a fantastic time to utilize this. And the squares really are the most constructive times, the times we build things and can really move things forward and implement things in our life. The challenge is that we want to challenge ourselves, right? Challenge ourselves to do this stuff constructively. And in this case, to be both soul-guided, receptive, and connected, while also balancing that out with action, initiative, assertiveness, and drive. And if we can find that healthy balance between the two, then fantastic. Of course, these are two very important elements of life. We need to, in life, be both receptive and soul-guided, while at the same time still taking initiative and action. And so this is the time of the year to challenge ourselves to do both, right? The soul-guided with the ego, the emotional with the physical, the receptive yet active, going with the flow yet pursuing, driven, direct. Okay, so that is the energy here. That's what you're mostly seeing here with all these aspects. Now, sort of sandwiched in here is also the Venus squaring up to Pluto. Okay, so most of this is going to be concentrated around the Thursday time period. We do have the square with Neptune coming in on Tuesday, the conjunction with the Sun and Neptune here on Wednesday. But for all intents and purposes, you can see the concentration of energy is around this, Wednesday, Thursday time period, especially Thursday here. But sandwiched with this, also just synchronistically, is that Venus is going to be squaring Pluto. So Venus, the planet of our relationships and values, is going to be in that imbalanced or clashing energy with deeper Pluto. Pluto is the side of ourself that needs to have depth and truth and candidness and rawness in our life, and in this case, in our values and in our relationships with Venus. And so finding the constructive way of doing that. I think this particular aspect would be normally very important, but I think it's probably taking on more of the back seat. As you can see, there's so much more going on astrologically. But as a backdrop to a lot of what we just discussed earlier, also finding that constructive way to be deep, in our values, in our enjoyments in life and connecting to life, and also in connecting in our relationships, deep in constructive ways, which might express ourselves as maybe practicing a bit of vulnerability or trust in our closer relationships that we do have that trust foundations with. Maybe in other relationships where we don't, maybe having to practice setting boundaries and protecting for ourselves a little bit, wearing some of that armor and protectiveness, which is important in certain situations and contexts. But again, finding the balanced and constructive way of depth and truth and, in our closer relationships, some of that intimacy as well. So anything constructive there around getting into that deeper world, especially with our enjoyments and relationships, I think will be a great way of working with that particular square. Okay, and then down here we just have some very minor sextiles, so these will definitely be taking the back seat to a lot of this. But you can see that those coming after this major conjunction and square suggests just more of the fact that we'll likely be easing up off of this energy come the weekend. Give it some time. As you can see, a lot of these are, this is all 1 degree orbs. A lot of these 1 degree orbs very strong still going into the weekend, but slowly as we ease out of it and go into next week, we'll be noticing more of the post transformed energies. In this sense, what's being transformed is more of that receptivity, is more of that healthy assertiveness and action in our life, and and that's being integrated towards the later part of the week into next week. And to support that a little bit, Venus will be sextiling Saturn, so maybe with some of those values and relationships could feel maybe a little bit grounded or responsible there Friday, Saturday. And then Saturday, Sunday, a bit of that deeper connection might come a little bit easier with the communications or with our minds or learning. Mercury sextile Pluto gives us an opening to do some of that depth, candidness, rawness in a way that's a little bit easier, at least in the context of our communications and whatever we might be thinking about or learning about, diving deep with. So we didn't even get into the lunar aspects because I don't want to confuse things too much for this week. This is really the most important thing, this highlight of this conjunction with the Sun, Mercury, and Neptune, and the square to Mars there. But I'll just mention them briefly here. For those of you who do want to dive a little bit deeper, we'll have the moon in Scorpio and Ophiuchus on Monday and Tuesday. So these could be a good couple days here for maybe a little bit of depth, maybe a little bit of healing. Again, some of that Pluto energy, starting to get that developed probably right at the beginning of the week here, Monday and Tuesday time. And then the middle part, while we have this stellium and square, we will have the moon in Sagittarius. So the moon will be in Sagittarius all the way up until late Friday. And so this will be a good time for expanding our perception on life a little bit, looking at the higher perspective on life. Maybe a little bit of an open mind could be healthy during some of this very important aspects here. And then as we do get into the weekend, we will have the moon shift into Capricorn for that later part of Friday, all day Saturday. So maybe a little bit of that responsibility we were talking about earlier could be good. We're talking about that with a little bit of discipline or patience with relationships. But in general, I think anything that's a bit productive or grounded or requires discipline could be good this later Friday, all day Saturday. And then the moon will be in Aquarius on Sunday. And so that could be some themes around our innovative side. That's really starting to close out the lunar cycle. We're going to have the new moon early next week around Tuesday. And so the moon finishing here is the symbol that the last new moon we had was in progressive Aquarius. And so we're going to be closing out anything that involves, it's still going to be continuing because of course we still have Saturn here, but anything recently that's been involving our visions for the future, maybe community, and maybe getting into more of that individual self-expression, that could be good around the Sunday. Okay, but not to add too much, the moon is certainly not going to be playing the major role here this week. It really is this three-way conjunction and square to Mars. So again, concentrated mostly around Thursday time period, but as you can see with the 1 degree orb and these planets these aspects sort of being staggered, we'll likely be feeling the energy all week. And once we get to the weekend, we'll be easing up out of it. That'll be the more post-transformed energies of it, where we're probably more connected with our soul and found a constructive way to let out some of that fire and assertive Mars energy. And then we start to finalize and close out the lunar month as we gear up for the new moon on Tuesday. So good to let the energies die down as well as we approach Tuesday. All right, everyone. So have a fantastic week. I hope this was helpful. Thank you again for watching and all of your support with this channel. If you're new to the channel, definitely sign up down below for MTZ Insiders. It is a free newsletter. We do get these videos released first before YouTube and extra content not normally released on YouTube. But again, have a great week, everyone, and I'll see you all next time for the next astrology forecast. Take care.